Welcome to another episode of Rose Resource Room. Today I'm here with Brook Wayne. Welcome to the show, Brooke.
Oh, thank you, Ro. It's such a great thing to be with you, and I'm just looking forward to having this conversation.
Me too. So, how's your heart today? How are you feeling?
Doing good. As we're getting ready for the next season, and so we're putting away the leftover season, which happens to be my daughter's wedding stuff, from 2 months ago. This is how real life is, right? I'm just like so much reflection happening today. Just thinking back to her beautiful wedding and how they're doing now. They're doing great, and putting away. I don't know how this happens, but we saved so many of our old homeschool books that are filled out. And I'm like, what do I do with those? Do I recycle those? Do I save them? So that's how I'm doing.
I hear you. Congratulations. So, I have a question for you that you probably don't get asked a lot because as moms, everything's about the children. So, I want you to introduce yourself, but you cannot use titles. So, you can't tell us that you're a mom. You can't tell us that you're a wife. If you have a job, you can't tell us about that. Tell us about you, the woman, Brooke, and then after that, you can tell us all the accolades and the titles and the roles.
All right. Sounds like a good challenge. I wrote down some things once of like all the things I enjoy, and my list was so long. Not that I actually do all of them all the time, but I like to just like write them down. So I really do like going out on a nature preserve that we have nearby. And I love it that we don't have to pay the property tax there. And I can just go and there's a trail that's kept up for me. So I really enjoy that. I like photography, though I'm not any good at it. I just do it for fun. And I love to read. So I have not read whole books for many years. I've started a gazillion books and I just never finish. So this last year, I've been like, I really want to start reading a lot more. So I've probably finished three the whole year and started 15, somewhere in that range. So that's something I enjoy. I enjoy coffee and I enjoy like there's a Christian coffee shop nearby that I'll go to, not by myself, but sometimes go with somebody, and I enjoy that a lot. And I love decorating. I just do it here and there. It's very simple usually, but I do enjoy decorating. So those are some of the outside of the family sorts of things that I enjoy doing.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. All right. So tell me, you are a wife, you're a mom. How did you and your husband meet? How many children do you have? Tell us all the things.
So how we met is a long story, so I'm gonna like shrink it way down. Basically, it started out because I was writing a girls' magazine when I was like ages of 14 through 20. And so I published this magazine, just a little paper or newsletter kind of thing that went out in the mail to about 1,000 girls. And through that, I decided I want to advertise this. So my mom got this magazine about homeschooling, and she's like, "Oh, that would be a good one to advertise in." So I advertised, and it so happened that their marketing director was this young guy named Israel. And so when we first talked, I thought he was a lot older. Come to find out, he's just a couple years older than I was at the time. And I started reading his articles. He started reading mine, long distance, mind you. And through a long series of events, I started realizing that as I was praying, I feel like God was very clearly saying that I was supposed to marry this guy named Israel. And so I tucked that away in my heart for about a year. And finally, I'm like, I can't seem to get rid of this thought. I really feel like God's calling me to marry him. Now, we had never met. I lived in Arizona and he lived in Indiana at the time. And so it kind of seemed like a really far off dream that was very unrealistic. And yet, I'll just spare you all the details, but God worked out various things that we actually ended up meeting. And then he started praying about whether we should be married. And it's like I saw God work in this incredible way to bring us together. So we've been married almost 27 years, and we have been blessed with 11 children. Now, two of those children are married. So we have ages 25 down to a 4-year-old. And I'm just telling you, I want to keep that little 4-year-old for a very long time. She's just so bouncy and happy. But we actually had this year, we had our first grandbaby born. And so she's a nice little plump 8-month old and just as happy as can be. So that's kind of the picture of our family right now.
Beautiful. That is an amazing story. Thank you for sharing the backstory. All right. So 11 children. You are in Michigan now, right?
Yes.
Okay. So where you are, do you have a lot of homeschool families? Do you have a big community? Is it normal for a lot of people to have 11 children? Because I grew up in New York and two children is a lot. So what's that
Right,
dynamic
right.
like?
Yeah, no, I grew up with just one brother. So the small family, standard American sized family, which, think oddly is starting to become almost like a large family to have two or
Yes.
three children. So having two was very normal for when I grew up. I think, there's just things that sometimes we see our parents go through that start to shape us. And early on, that was something that I saw my mom maybe regretting only having two. And so that kind of stuck with me. And obviously, it's going to be different for everybody, but God blessed us with these children. We're so thankful. Um, it was a journey of having some trust in that, of allowing the Lord to give us those children. And so I would say no, I know some large families in the area for sure, but it's not a typical thing in our area. Midwest tends to maybe have some larger
Yeah.
families than the East for sure, but
Mm.
not a typical thing in our area for sure. And then as far as homeschooling groups, where we used to live, which was the majority of our time here in Michigan, there was just not a lot, and a lot of that has to do with the government partnerships that had come into our area had just made it so that most families wanted to go that route instead of having co-ops and support groups and all that. And so basically for a long time there's just been a dearth in this pocket of Michigan, and now we've moved and there are lots and lots of options. And so we're still sometimes trying to figure out for our family season and all that, how can we help utilize some of that because there's some great options in our area.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. So I have a couple friends who only have one child, and they always say to me, bro, I don't know how you do it with three. And I'm like, I don't know how you do it with one. I actually
Yeah,
think it's easier to have more because one, you just made
yeah,
friends for your kids, right? Like they play with each other, and it's a lot more fun, just like a lot more joy in the home. For you
right.
with a large family, how do you juggle all the things specifically to homeschooling and then everything else like the domestic pieces of it?
Right, right. So I remember when we had one, two, three, somewhere in that range, I asked my mother-in-law who had six, and of course I felt like that was a large
Right.
family because I was coming from one brother. And I said, so what's the hardest amount of children to have? It's kind of like brace me because is it five? What number is it going to be? And she said one. And I was like, one? And she says, well, you have so much adjustment going from just being able to sleep when you want to sleep and have your life revolve around your activities and what you're getting done, and even when you want to take a rest and a break. And when you have that one, you are no longer able to orient your life around yourself. You have to orient it around this little baby. And that really stuck out to me that one is the most challenging. And then I really do think if you have one, as I have friends who have just one, they spend so much more time needing to interact with that child
Yeah,
and
because you
do
are
the
the friend.
things like play sorry all the time. I'm like, oh, you want to play a game? Go play with your brothers and sisters.
That's right.
So that makes that like so much easier to
Mhm.
have several, in our household, there's always somebody willing to play a game or go run outside with you. And so it's gotten to the point I see personality plays into this too. But we have our number 10 guy, he's six right now. He just cannot do anything by himself. And it's just like you need to learn a little bit of how to do that. And then our last one actually will play by herself. So I think it's a personality thing
Mhm.
sometimes too in that. And the environment they grow up in definitely shapes them. With our older ones, I just see their fruit. You go through so much of your day thinking, are they catching anything? Like when they're 5 to 10, and you're just day after day investing in them, and you're thinking, is this going anywhere? Are they going to get anything out of this? Feels like we're going over the same things about thinking about others or looking to the Lord for your answers. And after a while, you finally start seeing fruit. And here's what I have found. If you invest in those older children, they start to invest in be an example for the younger children. And, not everyone will have that same testimony. Each child needs to choose for themselves what they will do with what they're given, what we've taught them. But I see that trickle down effect, and I'm like, this is amazing. I love seeing something I taught the older ones. and was a big part of our life even, kind of go down to the younger ones. And it just creates like a lot more boundaries maybe or teaching experiences that our younger children get. So
Mhm.
I love that. In fact, for the homeschooling aspect, I'm utilizing our 16-year-old's love for math and saying, can you help us? Can you help your younger sibling with this problem? Because, not I like teaching math myself, but it's just like that's time consuming.
Yeah.
Could you do that for me this afternoon? And so that's one way that we've tried to find a little bit of a way to help our older children teach maybe something to the younger children. And I'm pretty picky about handling all of their teaching experiences and all their character and, that kind of interaction, that heart to heart connection that needs to happen. I'm really picky about handling that myself. And this is where I've watched large families, especially the oldest daughter in a large family, sometimes grow up and feel like she was the second mother,
Mhm.
having to bear all this responsibility. And I'm like, oh, I don't have that experience. I just sort of naively maybe thought that you grew up in a large family, you love it. And so I want to kind of shield my children a bit from that pressure and that
Right.
responsibility.
Mhm.
So, I'll pick things that maybe my children, my older ones, are really exceptionally good at and ask them to get involved with the younger ones on a very limited basis. And
Mhm.
so that works for, like I said, for the math, or once in a while, they'll be like, if I just want to make sure my children are prepped for teaching their own children someday, I'll work with, like, say, phonics with them a little bit, have them help the younger one in a very short, mild sense, not an
Mhm.
ongoing type of daily thing. So that's one way that we've kind of found just to get around, like, here's a little help for mom. But also with checking, I have such a hard time checking all the answers in every book. And I think most moms feel that way. So sometimes I'll say to the older children, hey, could you just check this lesson for me? And they whiz through it in 10 minutes or less. So it's just another way that I am trying to get them a little bit involved, but not like place a lot of burden on them. But the best way I think I've found for helping like streamline some of this and handling what feels like a juggling act so much of the time is having our young people learn how to manage the house, learn to run the yard and keep it up and the maintenance there, grocery shop. I love having drivers that will go grocery shopping for me. And the way I see it is those skills that they learn, whether it's cooking or yard work, landscaping, building something that needs done, or we do try to work with our kids sometimes on maintenance for house maintenance and that kind of thing. Those are skills that they can carry with them into their life. And sadly, we're all a bit selfish oriented. And I want my children to know that we are equipping them for their own lives, for their own future, and not just like they're serving our family and that's it. It's a dead end or something. Not that there's
Mhm.
any problem with that, of course. I mean, we want to teach our children servanthood when you don't
Right.
get anything back. But we're always trying to tell them we're helping you gain skills for your future. So it's not just mowing the grass
Right.
again. It's also helping you know how to do these things for your own future. And then talking about like this could become a job opportunity. Here's ways that you could utilize this in your future as a job, even.
Mhm.
So that helps me a lot. You know how it is if you have younger children and someone's bringing you dinner that night. Oh, there's one thing off your list that you have to get done.
Mhm.
And so divvying up the meals when they are able, like we have a 10-year-old, we're cooking waffles and sausage tonight. So, nothing fancy, but she's able to handle that for dinner. And that takes something off of my plate
Oh, yeah.
where I'm being able to delegate more and more, that kind of thing. So, I think a lot of times moms get into homeschooling because they hear a picture that is so beautiful. You're going to have a wonderful connection with your children in this homeschooling process. And of course, that's so exciting. Like, okay, yes. And here's the thing that really tends to happen is they get into this homeschooling adventure. And moms, of course, are super excited about teaching and about training and like, okay, we're going to do the math books and we're going to have this schedule and we're going to get stuff done. And then they meet with resistance from the children.
Yeah.
And then it's like out goes this beautiful picture of homeschooling, and all of a sudden you're dealing with reality that you've got children with bad attitudes, and probably you have a bad attitude yourself as a mom, if we're honest. And dinner is just like the meat's frozen still, and everything's just feels like this terrible juggling act, and you're making no progress. And
Mm.
so, what I like to encourage moms in is you have that mess. And I know it's sometimes just hard stuff that you're trying to deal with. And then you feel the pressure of, but I've got to teach the ABCs here and I've got to teach my math skills and all that. And what I have found is as we look at the big picture of what God is doing here, of helping us to handle teaching those academic things, but also dealing with the whole person and investing in their character, their attitude, prayerfully bringing them to the Lord through the gospel. It's a big, big thing where we talk through all these issues and we deal with the heart. And
Mm.
sometimes the heart can be very messy, and all these things can be just like day after day of seeking to do the same thing and the next thing. Number one, I think we need to pray and ask the Lord to look down in these homes that we're building and ask Him for His powerful Holy Spirit to do something in this mess. I love, I don't remember what verse it is, but it's in Proverbs, and it says, "Where there are no ox, the stable is clean.
Mm.
But where there are oxen, there's great productivity. There's a good harvest." And I like that so much because right now, and I'm sure in your homes too, it's like I feel like there's such a mess sometimes of attitudes coming up and all this stuff happening, and dinner's not really done on time, and of course the babies are always needing help and attention. And yet in that mess, God has a productivity, He has a harvest planned.
Mm.
And it seems like we just stick with it and stick with it and stick with it. But I am telling you, through the Lord's, Holy Spirit giving us wisdom and giving power to our children to see His light, that there's something beautiful He wants to create in that mess. So I hope that moms listening will be able to say, yes, it's not it may not be that beautiful picture where the lessons come easily and there's just instant heart connection, but it's worth fighting for. It's worth going through day after day and really working with their hearts because later on there's a harvest.
Mm, I love that. So there's so much that you said that I wanted to unpack because, when you think of homeschooling, a lot of people are like, oh, but it's so many children, you have to go over the same thing over and over. And one thing that really stuck out to me was how you had this beautiful balance of teaching responsibility while still
Mm,
allowing the children to be children, right? So I do
right.
want you to know how to make breakfast. I do want you to know how to maintain, but I do want you to go outside and run and play or just play with
Yeah.
your siblings, right? And I think
Yes.
it's a hard balance to strike, especially if you're not intentional,
Hmm.
right? Because you were saying,
So
I've
much.
seen some children really become the parent, and you're like, it's good in terms of independence and what they're going to need for their future, but it's not good if they feel the burden and start to resent it and they're missing out on their childhood, right?
Right, right. I gotta get Kleenex.
Yours. Yes, I think that's definitely a balance that we have to learn to strike. And the other piece that really stuck out to me is when you talked about the difference between academics and education. So you
Yeah.
have this thing that you're calling homeschooling, and when I said yes to God, for me it was like, okay, where's the curriculum, where's the book, and where's the pen? And then
Right.
I realized homeschooling was so much more than the curriculum. It was the
Yes.
hard schooling piece that you spoke about. It was as much for me, right? Like when you talk about meltdowns, it's not just the 2-year-old on the floor, it's the mommy meltdown of where is the pencil? Why can't we find the pencil? I'm cleaning every day, where's
Exactly.
the pencil, right? But it's really God taking us on this journey of, yes, you're going to have the beautiful connection. Yes, you're going to have all these things that look picture perfect on Instagram and Pinterest, but it doesn't start there. You have to go through that
Right.
process. And I'm like, that's
Right.
why you don't tell us the full picture because we probably wouldn't have signed up if we knew like the longer journey, right? But it's a process and it's a beautiful process when you
Yes.
really start to just slow down and let it play out.
Right, right. I feel like what my mom used to say, because I was actually homeschooled. My mom started homeschooling us in 1983. And so homeschooling is definitely a way of life for me. And yet, I was the student who had it kind of laid out for me, and my mom was super organized, which, sometimes it's a little bit hard to live up to. But going on into my own world as the homeschool mom, it is just like you see problems and you see like the lost pencil and the aggravation maybe it causes within my own heart, and the fact that the child is not receptive. And of course, it's so easy to give up. That's the easy solution. And it's easy to say, okay, I'm just going to shop this job out to somebody else. And, it's like, yes, somebody else could teach your child, and they might even teach your child better than you could on those academic levels. And yet there's something really special that happens when it's within that family dynamic where parents are investing in their own children. Children just tend to take on, okay, my parents are teaching me this. This must be really important. And then as parents, we care about our children so much, so we want to invest in them and not just academically pour facts into them, but also give them a perspective, a worldview, so to speak, of how are they going to be able to use this? How can they use all the stuff that they're learning for God's glory, for their futures, and helping them understand like there's a bigger picture here of what we're trying to do. And of course, within the home, you've got relationship dynamics, not only between you as a parent to your child, but then between the siblings and, all the extended family too. And I think that's so needed because there's a lot of what employers would call it soft skills that are developed at an early age from being with your siblings, being with your family throughout that homeschool day. And that does not happen easily. I know for myself that the checklist is super important. I love making checklists. Like I just wish I could sit with my planner for an hour every single day and just plan because it's my favorite thing to do for looking ahead. And I really feel like there's a lot of value in having a plan and having a goal. So much of my time, though, I'm not realistic. But when I have that plan, if I hold to it too tightly, I find that I'm irked by the fact that so and so has a bad attitude, or so and so needs to talk longer, or that they don't get their math problem. And it's like I'm not clipping away at this the way I want to, or feel I need to even. And so it creates in me a little bit of this unwillingness because I've got, maybe a little bit of an idol where I want it to go smoothly.
Mm,
And when I have come to grips and said, as long as I am flowing with what is needed in reality, what's the next step my child needs? Maybe they need longer on that math question, and I need to creatively walk through that with them. Then I can go, oh, I can slow down for that. Because that's my real heart, is not to get things checked off. It's to help them grow and help them progress from step A to step B. And same thing with the heart attitudes. Sometimes we just need to shove that math book aside and we need to take our arm around that little one and say, you know what? You are doing well on the math, or maybe they're not doing well. We need to address that too and say, you need to learn to apply yourself and talk them through that. So much of the time, I think we expect our children to know how to learn.
yeah.
And I found we almost have to go through a process where we teach them and show them what you need to do is apply yourself, apply your attention here, and give them then a break after a little bit because we need to realize they're little children, right? My husband likes to used to like to watch how things used to be happen on radio where they would play a soft, gentle, sort of slower music and then next would be followed by something more upbeat, so that you would have kind of the contrast and variety happening through, say, a musical program on the radio. And when he said this to me years ago, it really struck out to me that this is very useful for working with young children because their attention span is so different. When they're very, very little, you've got them just wanting to go from one thing to another. And of course, screen time in our culture does not help at all. So I've found that I try to structure my day where I go from something that is fast-paced or challenging or something to something more fun for them that they might enjoy better, like listening aloud to a story, to something more active, like building something, creating studying something, doing their science experiment. So that I've got a change up happening. And I feel like that's one way that we can work with our young children in understanding like this is how they learn best. And not just how they learn best, but how they might really retain some of the information that we're so willing to try to get down into them and to teach them. But then realizing they have different frames than us, they have a different capacity for paying attention. And I like to spending lots and lots of time on one thing, but my children, especially at the younger ages, they can't handle that. And so if I'm going to be requiring, you know, here's what we're going to be doing, here's what's next and all that, I need to also take into account, okay, how can I best hold their attention? And that takes some planning. It's not like it goes smoothly every day for sure. But when I have a plan and I know I want to rotate what happens next and what kind of difficulty level it is for them, it helps them to be able to stay in and tune in with me better.
You drop so many nuggets there, like everything from holding onto our plan so tightly that we leave no room for God or leave room for like actual life happening. I am definitely the planner, the checklist person, the to-do list, and all the things. So I was really, I wasn't convicted, I was encouraged when you said it because there's a place for planning, right? Because
Yeah.
otherwise your day is like completely out of control. But then there's also a place for that flexibility. And I
Yeah.
remember last night saying to my kids, like I saw, okay, it's like 15 minutes before they need to go to bed. I'm like, all right, guys, wrap up, do the last things you need to do. And then one came in and he said, can I just tell you about what I've been reading? And I'm like, that's music to a parent's ears. Of course you can tell me
Yeah.
what you're reading about. And he's telling me about space and the James Webb Telescope and all these different things. And I'm like, what would have been on my checklist is to make sure that my child knows how to read, that they can do all these things. But he was doing it
Right.
in his own way at his own time. It wasn't at
Hmm.
11 a.m. where it was like read for 20 minutes. It was, I don't have anything to do. I'm just going to grab a book and I'm really going to get into it. It's the same thing. It just wasn't
Yeah.
happening on my schedule. And I was just so excited. And I just really like thank God for seeing
Hmm.
this child who I thought was going to be a reluctant reader grabbing books and just finding things that he's interested
Right.
in and then wanting
Right.
to come to me and tell me all that he's interested in and all that he learned. And another thing you mentioned in terms of like outsourcing education. Before I started homeschooling, someone said to me, wait until you start teaching math. And I took this and I internalized it as math is going to be hard, it's going to be a nightmare. But I love math.
Yeah.
So, I just took this and I'm like, okay, it's going to be so hard. And like you start to feel all this angst over something that you haven't even started. Like you're dreading. I'm like, what is going on? Why did I
Yeah.
internalize what this person said to me?
Yeah.
And I got to a point where I actually outsourced and I bought a video and I was watching it with my son. And the teacher explained something and then I said to him, did you get it? And he said no. And then I explained it to him and then he got it. And I'm like, why did I pay for this video? Like, if I'm going to outsource it and I'm still doing it, it's because I understand my child and I know how to reach them,
Yeah.
right? So I'm not saying that everyone has to do every single thing, but before you think about outsourcing this thing or before you tell yourself that you can't do it, just give it a try and make it practical. One more thing
Hmm.
I'll share is we have a lot of songs and jingles to things that we do so that they can memorize it. So we were talking about the air of a square and the air of a rectangle, and they were singing it and they knew everything. And I said to them, if this room is the length is this and the width is this, what's the area? And they couldn't tell me. And I said, see,
Right.
there's a difference between knowledge and wisdom because if you don't know how to apply that,
Yeah.
then it doesn't mean anything to you. And then I explained it in like less than 5 seconds and they're like, oh, okay, I got it. And I was able to give them several examples and they understood. But it's just
Yeah.
like we know our kids. There could be a teacher drilling into a kid's head over and over. The area of a rectangle is length times width, and they come home telling you, but they have no idea how to use it. But when you
Right.
do know your kids, you know how to explain something in a way that matters and you understand how to make things practical, that you're not just throwing facts at them, but you're giving them
Right.
tools for real life.
That's
Yeah,
really good.
thank you.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is we do get so worried about like how are we going to teach them algebra or something that's maybe a bit far off
Yeah.
at the beginning. And it's like there's just so many good curriculums to either hand to your child that are written to the excuse me, written to the student, where they'll be able to do it bit by bit, or there's video classes like you mentioned, or there's tutors, or there's just so many options.
Yeah.
And maybe even getting someone from your church or your fellowship to be able to help with some of the challenging problems. Or of course, if dad knows how to do it, like there's just other
There
options
are.
out there. But a lot of it comes down to, for me, why I homeschool has very little to do with academic stuff, and it
Uh-huh.
has more to do with the discipleship process. And, we tend to look at it like, oh, it's all neutral out there in the government schools.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yet it is not neutral. And it's becoming more and more clear that there's an agenda there to train the country to think a certain way
Right.
and to view things a certain way. And I'm like, I want to raise a generation of thinkers who can see the agenda and not just be led mindlessly to follow the agendas that are happening in our country. So, like, the academic portion becomes kind of the, oh, here's what we need to do and accomplish every day. And yet it's the whole structure, the whole environment that we create for our children that teaches them, we pray to teach through a biblical perspective so they see truth and they see how to apply it, they see how to think about things, but then also to know how to do that family life that I mentioned earlier, how to relate to people outside of your exact age classroom, how to, get along with a difficult sibling. I think I'm encouraged when I hear as siblings grow up, oftentimes they can work together really well because they have managed to learn all how to deal with all the little squabbles and all that during childhood. And I'm like, that's really cool. Later on, they can get along. My mom always said, if you can get along with your brother, you'll be able to get along with anybody. And she didn't mean like, oh, your brother's so hard to get along with. She just meant that's the
Proximity.
one challenging space in your life. You learn it young, you'll have it for life.
That's a really thoughtful um, response that she had. So I have another question for you. Like, based on your experience homeschooling, and I think you made a fabulous point just now when you said, it's the academics is just one fragment of like what the whole idea is, right? Like
Right.
it's a bigger view. It's making sure that the children have a biblical worldview. It's making sure that they're disciple, that they're ready for life. They have life skills, right? Like how many kids come out of college and don't know what a checkbook is or how to balance it, you know? So what would you say is one of the biggest lessons that you learned over time, or what is something that you wish you had known going in?
Hmm. I think wish I had learned or knew that child training is so much more than just saying something to a child. One
Tell us
example.
more.
Somehow I just thought I would be able to say to my young children, you should be gentlemanly, and more boys at first,
Yeah.
or you should act like a little lady. And they would do it. And I think that was like, oh, somehow that was a surprise to me just to see, like, they don't tend to just pick up your words like that. That's something you work towards is that they listen, just like Proverbs says over and over. It's my son, listen to the words I speak to you, and listen to my heart. So I think that's something that comes by and by, but that there's a lot of practice. And I think as a young mom, I kind of knew that training was something that was supposed to be happening, but I didn't know how that differed from just like academic teaching
Yeah.
or from here's my expectation. I want you to come when you're called. And so I wish I could go back and maybe learn that practice has so much to do with this, just on those good moments, being able to take a little child and say, we're going to practice coming and make a game. Of course, load our children up with lots of praise when they do well. And so I wish that was something that maybe I'd captured a little bit earlier on to be able to just be able to like, oh, you lead them step by step and you look for ways to do the teaching and the training when it's not a problem, when it's not this disobedience or defiant attitude, but when things are going well. And just bit by bit, then teach them along that way. One thing we do for that is we have Bible time every single morning. For my husband, it works out better to do it in the morning versus in the evening. So we do it in the morning, and that's a good chance for us. We because usually it's like a chapter of the Bible, or right now we're reading through Romans, and just a bit by bit. But things and conversations kind of come up where we start talking about other parts of life too, or how this speaks to this area. And it's like continually just that little bit of way to continually invest in our children, at a happy time of day when there's no tension, there's no 50% of your math problems are incorrect, that kind of thing. And so I like to capture those moments a lot. That's kind of one of my favorite things to do. Um, and then as far as like, what would I change? Is that what the question was?
Sure, you can answer that.
Yeah, what would I change? Oh, wow. Uh, you know, you sometimes think, oh, I wish I could change, like I could be the 5 a.m. mom if I could capture more time. That's just not part of my life. I am definitely the person who says it is vain to get up early in the morning. I'll be like 8 o'clock is good, but on a more serious note, like capturing more time as we have children who have the older brothers and sisters now grown. I see younger and younger ages, they want to get their first job and get their first car. And it's like, how did you get old enough to do this and to be thinking about this? And so I realize capturing those important conversations about, life and how to find a life partner, and what you're going to do with a job. I feel like some of those questions and those big conversations, I wish I could pull down a little bit younger. I don't know what I'm meaning younger, maybe in the 12 to 14-year-old age, really start to be talking about that more, than waiting for when you think, oh, now they're going to be graduating. Okay, now we'll have these conversations, because your time is so limited. So, yeah, I find that that's helpful. And I think one thing I find helpful for myself is keeping a list of books that I really want to go through with my children, because I do tend to get very foggy brained and just be like, I don't know, we'll just do the next thing on the list. And sometimes that doesn't lead to those conversations that I want to have. So keeping books that I can be like, here, you're 13 years old. This is a good book for you to read right now. You're 16 years old. This is a good book for you to read. And that helps to me to kind of initiate some conversations. Maybe even help sometimes when it's a third person. I'm like, this is a really good book, but it's got a lot in there, especially if you have older teen boys. Sometimes they want to be like, oh, let's dissect this conversation. You're like, no, no, I want you to be quiet and think about this topic. So here's a book, and feedback to me when you're done what you think of it, or feedback to me every couple chapters. And so that's a way that I've found just to keep, when I don't feel like I have all the answers, or I don't have the bandwidth maybe to be able to have those conversations, I'll just be able to grab those kinds of resources and then help my children start thinking down that path.
Wow. So when you mentioned that sometimes we don't know how to train someone or teach something, it resonated so deeply with me because, I know people say, it's what you model, and a lot of it is caught, not taught. I get that. But I'm definitely the mom who will say, okay, go clean your room. And I know
Yeah.
what that means, and I know what my expectation is. And then my kids will come down and say, okay, mom, I did it. And then I'll go check, and I'm like, well, how was it before? Like, what do you mean? What do you mean you did it? And they're like, well, I did that and I did that. And they literally go through like a list of things that they did. And then I had to just simplify. And I'm like, okay, when I say clean your room, what that means is there's nothing on the floor, the beds are made.
Right.
And when I say that, they'll say, okay, and they'll go and do exactly what I said. But it would never dawn on me that I'd have to itemize what I mean by get dressed or clean your room or, do
Right.
whatever. But it's a really good point. And what I love about these conversations is you're telling us what you've learned over years and years, over probably tears and joy and all the things. And you just downloaded it all for us where we can just like take a bunch of notes and implement them and pray about which ones God would have us to do. So I thank you so much for sharing all your gems and a lot of your wisdom and these nuggets. And I really enjoyed our time together. If you have any final thoughts, we'd love to hear it.
Oh, thank you, Ro. I really just want to encourage moms. Sometimes it's easy to be like, I'm failing at this, and I'm not seeing progress. I'm not seeing this beautiful picture of family life involved. In fact, it's rather, difficult. And I want to encourage you that these things take a long time to grow. And you can change yourself by God's grace. You can change yourself and your perspective. And then as you realize that what God's doing inside of you is good and complete, it's easier to then feed out towards your family members and be able to help them on that next step that they need to take instead of taking it personally, like, oh, my son must hate me because he threw his math book on the floor. And, it shows that he needs help learning how to control his temper. It shows he needs help learning how to submit to the lordship of Christ, but it doesn't need to be taken personally. And so if you have mess going on in those attitude things, I really want to encourage moms, stick at it because God's doing something beautiful in your family, but also inside of you.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Rose. Great to be with you.
My pleasure.